Waves and Words.
Wellen und Worte.
Exploring the depths of the human experience.
A journey of reflection and renewal. Welcome to our podcast Waves and Words, a space for reflection, personal growth, creative expression, and a deeper connection to yourself. We create each episode as a unique journey to inspire, uplift, and making you feel your wholeness.
So, whether you're here to reflect, recharge, or reimagine, join us as we delve into the heart of the human spirit, balancing artistic expression with practical wisdom. Let's begin the journey together.
A very warm welcome to you out there listening, and of course, a very warm welcome to you, Barry. Even though we entered the cold season, at least here in Berlin, it is end of November and we already had a temperature below the zero. How is it in the UK right now?
Hi, Carolin. Yeah, it's much of the same here in the UK. We've had a few mornings with frost on the ground. But it looks lovely. It looks very enchanting at this time of the year. And there's also something about this time of the year, though, like late November as we transition from late autumn into winter, that always seems to bring me, at least, into a reflective mood. So the darker days almost invite that inward or invite you to turn inward. And that fits perfectly with today's topic.
I agree totally, because today's topic is one that's completely directed to the inner side, to the inside of us. So let's introduce it. We want to talk about ways and methods to find your purpose. First of all, I'd like to ask or to discuss, why is it important at all to find one's purpose? So what is your opinion here? Or did you find some figures or some facts?
Yeah, that's it's a great topic that we're touching upon in this podcast, and I find the idea of purpose um, isn't something that is very kind of like an abstract thing that one can chase. Um, it's actually deeply practical in many senses. So when I was going back through my own well-being guide that I wrote and reading articles on the internet and books and so forth, one thing stood out very strongly. Um, is that it seems that when people have a sense of purpose, they tend to have an anchor. So in my well-being guide, what I'm always kind of really writing about in that is redefining values and meaning, because as you know, modern life pulls us in so many different directions that our attention becomes very, very scattered. So purpose helps to reduce that scattering. I believe it pulls our energy into a direction that perhaps feels more coherent, a direction that resonates within us, within each of us. So I guess you could say that people with a sense of purpose tend to report being perhaps better emotional, having better emotional resilience, having stronger motivation, and perhaps a deeper sense of satisfaction even when life is difficult. What I found for reading particularly interesting is that purpose doesn't have to be something that is grand. It doesn't have to be something that is world changing. It can just be something simply that needs to feel true or feel true to the person that is living it.
Okay, yeah, I see. So, would you say that this life purpose makes puts something into a bigger meaning, but I mean like not for a higher cause, but I mean like for the life that you live in general, that um, I'm living my life and I'm having my purpose. So, for example, saving trees or augmenting the number of trees in the world. And so this means I'm putting everything, every decision, every action under this purpose. So it makes it all like whole? Does it mean that?
Yeah, it could mean it could mean many different things into a bigger story or a bigger narrative. And I think if you look over the history of humanity through different books, different religious texts, and
Hmm.
philosophical texts, some would argue that we are part of something bigger, and that our purpose of humanity is to move forward together and help each other. But for me, it means living in alignment, more importantly, with what I value, not just what I think I should value. And there's a difference between the two there. So I believe purpose is something that emerges from perhaps the intersection of many different things. Three things in particular I can think of is what makes you feel alive, what aligns with your values, and then also what contributes to the world around you. So it doesn't have to be a grand thing, but it could be little things like you just mentioned of planting trees and things like that. So
Hmm.
for me, purpose isn't just a single destination, or it's more like a direction of travel, something that helps me navigate life with a bit more clarity, even if the path in my life keeps shifting and moving. So I think purpose is something that is personal to you, but also reflects and influences and impacts on other people around you.
Hmm. Let's go back to those three things uh, that you believe purpose is emerging from. So you mentioned it's from what makes you feel alive, what aligns with your values, and what contributes to the world around you. Um, I wanted to add so that um, in the last episode, I was citing a little book about resilience, and in this book, they were also talking about so how can you find your purpose? Because they also say that from a health point of view, people who live purposefully are much more, it's much more easy to cope with stressing events and to take these as positive challenges in their life. And they mention, oh, sorry, they mention four ways. So they say, from a health point of view, people who live purposefully, for them, it's much more easy to cope with stressing events and to take these as positive challenges in their lives. And as they have the belief that there's a special purpose or meaning, they subordinate everything to this meaning. And a stressing event becomes, for example, an assessment or a challenge that you have to overtake. So it means like if you want to be a writer or take yourself to be already, you take yourself to already be one, and the publishing house turns down your first book, you might take it as a hint that either it was not the right publishing house for your first book, or you still have to go a little way in your work. So,
Hmm.
for example, Paul Auster's first book was turned down for 80 times until he found a publishing house.
Oh.
So why um, purpose is important in life? To have a motivation in life, to have a reason to get out of bed, to live, to be. Okay, so but what if you don't know what causes you to do something? What if you just do something because you have an inner urge to do something? Can you live without knowing your purpose? Can you just, I mean, of course, a lot of people are living just without knowing their purpose or without
Mhm.
having one.
Yeah.
But what if you're just doing things and you don't have like a clear purpose for you? You just do the things because you have this urge, this inner urge.
Hmm. That's a brilliant question. Can you live without knowing your purpose? I think you can certainly live, but I'm not sure if you can thrive in the fullest sense. And I say that very lightly and gently because purpose doesn't always come, I guess, with a clear label or a dramatic revelation. Sometimes you perhaps only recognize it in hindsight, like a little whisper after you've done something or before that urges you to do something. Um, and and that's how often it begins as an inner urge, like you said, something inexplicable that pushes you to act or to create or to explore, express, even when you don't fully understand why. That urge is a form of purpose, I would say. It just hasn't taken shape yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Still, I think uh, the artist's purpose is a special kind of purpose
Hmm.
because, and I will come back to this later, because artists creating art that, I mean, of course, you have art that is mm, very beautiful, then you have art that is um, very deliberated, art that expressing political opinions or trying to show something that the society hasn't uh, seen yet.
Hmm.
But um, still, why? So why is the artist doing what he or she does? So that is a point I want to come back to later because creating art isn't in itself um, having a purpose like helping people, helping humanity, fighting poverty, or um, trying to avoid the climate change.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, totally. Um, I mean, many people feel lost simply because they expect purpose to arrive perhaps as an answer. When, as I mentioned, when actually it often arrives perhaps as an impulse, a pull, a curiosity, a relentlessness. And artists seem to be more in tune with that pull and m more likely to act upon it. So you mentioned the author being turned down 80 times is extraordinary. But it's also a powerful reminder when someone feels a deep sense of purpose. Perhaps in this case, rejection becomes resistance training rather than defeat in a sense. And so I think you can live without consciously naming your purpose, but people who do know, even vaguely, tend to navigate, I guess, life with more resilience, more orientation, perhaps.
Yeah. So let's at first take a look at this little book about resilience, where they give us 4 ways of how to find your purpose, and then let's come back later to the case of the artist.
Hmm.
Um, so, in this little book about resilience, they write you can find your purpose in the service of a special matter. So, we do a certain kind of work which we give meaning to. For example, doctors who want to save lives or children's lives, or whose aim is to cure a certain disease. The second one, in the commitment to human beings, by the loving of a person or in the commitment of a special group of people. The third way is in spiritual experience, with the knowledge and the being loved by God or another spiritual deity.
Hmm.
And there's a fourth way, which is by Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor. And he says, when you're thrown into a fate that you cannot change and where you are forlorn and completely helpless, you're forced to rise above yourself. So you have to deal with a situation that you cannot change, and you have to no active influence, no control. You somehow have to evolve, grow, and mature And by doing this, you will, this procedure will give you a meaning. And so it's a very
Mm,
special situation he describes, and it's definitely a situation deriving from a Holocaust experience.
mm.
What would you say? How could you find your purpose? Do you have some, yeah,
So I think,
methods?
yeah. So before I go and say how I find my purpose, perhaps I think the little book of resilience about resilience that you've just shared, the four ways, is very interesting. Um, and certainly you will see this reflected in society and perhaps within people that you know or meet on a daily or regular basis. And I find these four approaches: service, commitment, spirituality, and of course the Viktor Frankl perspective actually show up across cultures and throughout history, time and time again. And when I've reread certain books that have influenced me, I do tend to see these themes everywhere. So for example, three books that have really had a profound impact on the way I think. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga talks a lot about contribution. The Adlerian psychology frames purpose not as self-improvement, but as improving life for others. And certainly that mirrors the first two types of service and commitment to people that you've mentioned. Another book is the Power of Now, and this sits beautifully within the third type, so spiritual experience. Eckhart Tolle argues that purpose can only truly be found in presence, not in the projections of the mind. So it's all about being present, living within the now and the power of now. So purpose becomes something you intrinsically, not something you chase externally in that
What
sense.
what is a projection of the mind? What does it mean?
So it means what you think you should be doing or what your purpose should be based on external influences. So you may be influenced by people around you or by the media and so forth. And often not, we within ourselves, there's always a battle in our mind with our ego. Our ego tells us what we should be doing. It's based on, looking good or trying to fit in with what everyone else is
Mm,
doing.
okay.
So the power of now teaches all about being the kind of the watcher of your mind and being mindful of those thoughts when they pull you in the direction away from your true self. And then the last book is *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, and this connects strongly with the fourth of Frankl's idea of meaning emerging from struggle. This is where Harari writes about how humans construct meaning, especially in times of crisis. And purpose often comes from our ability to adapt to situations and adapt stories about ourselves and our circumstances. So in this sense, purpose is not one dimensional. It comes from how we live, how we think, how we feel, and then how we connect within ourselves and with others. Especially when we're in situations we can't control. And those are often the moments that shape us the most.
Um, so what I differ from your your last statement is that purpose is also kind of storytelling somehow.
Yes, because and that relates to what in the book *Sapiens* is that what makes us the humans as humans, what makes us different is our ability to tell stories compared to other species
Mhm.
on the planet, and it's our way to tell stories that we can influence other people and even ourselves as well. So the ability to narrate, to create, to for art and that sort of expression gives lots of people purpose and gives humanity a purpose. I think we're all striving to do something or to feel like we are with our lives calling in some way. For some people, it's art. For others, it's politics, and so forth.
So, and how did you find your purpose?
It's a good question. I've found my purpose not in one particular single moment, but I guess through a series of small realizations, little nudges, if you like to call them. So a lot of it came from sitting with my values and from noticing what keeps returning to me no matter how many times I move away from it. The questioning, the writing, the exploring. These are all parts of what I now recognize as my purpose. So some might confuse purpose with achievement, something that needs to be clearly defined, something you can point to either mentally or physically. But I think purpose is more about how I am in the world than what I produce in the world. So, for example, a flower that you may see in spring or summer doesn't purposely do anything to you or for you. It just exists. It's being its true self, but yet it gives us, other people, joy and pleasure to look at. So, for me, my purpose has become about encouraging reflection, helping people look inwards and reconnect with themselves. And I do this even through lecturing at university, or whether it's through writing the well-being guide, or whether it's when I'm volunteering coaching athletes on the track and so forth. So whether through writing or conversation or the kind of general work I do, that feels like the thread that ties everything together. And I think, like you, Carolyn, I've also felt, that inner urge, a kind of persistent pull. The more I listen to it, the clearer it becomes. And I would say that's
Mm,
my purpose. I believe. And same question to you. How do you find your purpose?
yeah. So first of all, I wanna still say something about what you just explained.
Hmm.
It's so in all those self-help books, I also have like many books like here on my desk now because to prepare for our episode, I was going through my bookshelf and I was looking for all the books that might give me hints about finding a purpose.
Hmm.
So it seems like those books promise something like you just have to answer this question and then you're gonna know your purpose. I mean, not all of those books, but it's like it always feels like the promise. And in the end, it's not like that. It's not like the revelation. Sometimes it comes as a revelation, like in the morning you wake up and then you just know. You just know the direction where you have to go. But
Hmm.
it's so for me, it was not like that. And you just described that it wasn't for you like that. You just had something like an urge and you kept doing it, and you also maybe you also had defeats. You were disappointed by while doing it. I was definitely following my urge. I was disappointed several times and I failed so many times, but still I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And then somehow I improved, like following my urge, and I got better. But just because I continued doing it, doing it, doing it. And I don't know if this is my purpose, but it's like I just want to say that a purpose is something that is like maybe um, blossoming or blooming or like showing up slowly, always a little bit. And maybe you also have to help it somehow to,
Hmm.
yeah, to show. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there. It that urge you have for creating music or for writing poetry. Um, for me, it's writing. I like to write now.
Mhm.
Of course, I've had rejection when it comes to writing as well. I've tried to publish some books and stuff, but no one's willing to take it on. But I always have felt the urge to write from a young age, and so I've always wanted to write firstly for me, um, and because I've wanted to write something, I've had this story in my mind or this poem in my mind and so forth. So even rejection doesn't stop me, and I write for me. So I've written a lot of stuff, but many stuff I would even dare try to or want to publish because I wrote it for me or I wrote it because I wanted my one of my kids to read it and stuff like that. So that just answering that urge, answering that pull that you have, and just kind of keeping that pull alive, that persistent pull, and then responding to it. You don't have to become a famous artist or someone famous in the field of physics or so forth. But if your purpose is to answer deeper questions of life and humanity and do something, then you are in some way reaching and fulfilling that purpose. And as I said earlier, it's not about, for me, purpose is not about making some grand achievement or some
Mhm.
success or something. It's about
Yeah.
answering that pull that you keep having, that you keep coming back to on a regular basis.
Mm. You were asking about if I already found my purpose. So
Hmm.
I'm not at all sure about if I already found mine. I've never been sure about that. But what I have to say, and this is also the reason why I picked out this topic and asked you if we could make an episode about that topic. Mm, the the thing is that, like, the more I think about it, comes to something like an acceptance. So, um, but let me just get back to all those books that I have. So I found a lot. So, for example, John Strelecki, the Why Are You Here Cafe, or The Big Five for Life. Rolf Dobelli, a Swiss philosopher, The Art of Living the Good Life, in German, Die Kunst des guten Lebens. Esther and Jerry Hicks, Ask and It Is Given. Dan Millman, Wisdom of the Peaceful Warrior. Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Or What Color Is Your Parachute by Richard Nelson Bowles and Catherine Brooks. So many books about this topic.
Hmm.
Um, and the thing is that while I was going through my shelves, I also picked out one of my poetry books, and I cannot, so it was completely intuitively, and it was a book by Rainer Maria Rilke, a very famous Austrian poet, and
Hmm.
he wrote, among other poems, the Duino elegies. In German, it's the Duineser Elegien.
Yes, yes.
And the beginning of those Duino elegies is to me one of the strongest selection of words ever written. And I can just say so, when I read it, it makes me stop breathing because it is so, I, th- I think it's not just beautiful, it is touching me in a very deep way. And also this beginning is like very renowned and famous in the literature world. So it's not just me. And is it okay if I read it?
Yeah, sure. I
Like,
would love that. Please.
okay. So I'm going to read the beginning in German, and then I'm going to read it in English.
Okay.
In German, it is: Wer, wenn ich schrie, hörte mich denn aus der Engel Ordnungen? Und gesetzt selbst, es nähme einer mich plötzlich ans Herz. Ich verginge von seinem stärkeren Dasein, denn das Schöne ist nichts als des schrecklichen Anfang, den wir noch gerade ertragen, und wir bewundern es so, weil es gelassen verschmäht, uns zu zerstören. Ein jeder Engel ist schrecklich. In English, it is: Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels' hierarchies, and even if one of them suddenly pressed me against his heart, I would perish in the embrace of his stronger existence. For beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror, which we are barely able to endure, and our art, because it serenely disdains to annihilate us. Each single angel is terrifying. So I I don't want to analyze it. I just and it also might be that it loses that the I don't know how it is in the translation for you in English. I just
Mm,
can say that in German it's really, really, really strong.
mm,
And when I read it, I feel deeply touched and it makes me hold my breath. And it's like maybe I don't want to disturb the echo of the birds. The, the breathing is a cycle, and I just stop breathing because I want to keep this moment. And the question I have is so, why did Rainer Maria Rilke write? So, did he write? Why did he create something like that? So,
that is a question to me.
if you want. So, it's a question to all of us.
I mean, it's beautiful, genuinely beautiful piece of work there. And I completely understand what you mean by saying you don't want to analyze it. You just it's see see yes, I know why you don't want to analyze it. Sometimes things are just meant to be felt. They're meant to be experienced in the moment that you experience them, and just experience through feeling and not necessarily through any kind of analysis. I think to answer your question, why did Rhino write this? I think in a way, he wrote for the same reason many of us feel compelled to create, because something in him demanded expression, not for perhaps not for fame, maybe not for clarity, but because there was an inner feeling, an inner pressure that uh, it needed to be released. So, purpose is often the thing that moves through you, I guess, rather than something you invent. And I think that's true for Reiner. Writing was, I guess, how his inner world exceeded its boundaries, so to speak. It was the form of his existence naturally poured into a poetic form. So some people carry their purpose like a load, others like Reiner simply let it spill out into beautiful art. I guess if that answers that question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, um, thank you for answering the question. It is, you said purpose is somehow flowing through you. Yeah, I like
Mm,
that idea. Mm. And it also, when I think about why I do what I do, I also only know this. I had an urge to write and also to do something with my voice all my life, mm, and it was important to me. I didn't see a purpose in this except for me just having this pushing inside of me to do it all over again. And I have failed so many times in, for example, my singing or my speaking, and I was told you're you speak too low and whatever. And I just kept going to my singing class all the time, and now I can really sing, and I know I have a beautiful voice, and it really I am yeah, I just kept doing it, and yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and this is also what I am saying about this acceptance,
mm,
that somehow I had to accept this part of me inside this pushing, because um, when they tell you in the beginning, why do you do this? It doesn't bring you money. You're not even good at it. It doesn't give you a reason to continue. But if you have this urge, you follow this urge, You just continue doing it,
Yeah.
and and then slowly but step by step you're getting better.
Mm.
So like this inner pushing, this purpose can also help you to overcome the voices from the outside.
I yeah, I totally agree. And you know, some of us are really lucky to live our lives where we feel like we're answering or calling or living our purpose. For many of us, we have our jobs that we earn to make a living, put food on the table, but that doesn't mean you can't still answer your purpose or follow your purpose. So the way I like to look at it, my purpose is I like to write. So in my spare time, I write. I like to explore well-being and things like that. So my job is a means to look after myself and my family and to ensure that everything in our world is nice. But then in my spare time, I choose to follow my purpose and stay in touch with that. So your question about why do painters paint, for the same reason singers sing, dancers move, or storytellers speak, it's because they can't not do it. It's an instinct more than a decision, a way of being, I would say, more than just having a career. Some of us are lucky to have a career that fits our purpose and we feel like we are answering that. But I would say what repeats itself in you is you. Because if you keep having that pull to come back to create and so forth, I think that is your purpose, your true purpose, and you can do that side by side by living ordinary jobs and things like that, as some people would say. I think maybe that's the simplest way to answer it. Painters paint because something inside resists silence. Writers, I write because words arrive before explanations.
Mm.
I think of things before I analyze them and say, okay, how do I change that expression, etc. So, in that sense, purpose often shows up as the thing that we return to, even when it's difficult, even when it makes no sense, or even when it's not working out, or even when no one is applauding and we are by ourselves in our rooms working and writing.
I love the phrase, purpose is the thing that you can't stop doing.
Mm,
Our discussion now gives me a complete new perspective on this purpose topic because when you hear this, yeah, how to find your life purpose and so on, then I always thought, okay, so you have to have something like a purpose of improving humanity, fighting against climate change, and so on. But this thing that just following the urge and letting it flow through you, this image is giving me somehow a kind of release. And also, what we shouldn't forget is that once we have I'm coming back to Paul Auster, for example. Paul Auster
mm,
is
mm,
the writer who was rejected 80 times. He continued, and I mean, maybe he was also wasn't didn't know why he was writing it, and maybe he also didn't have like something like a purpose. But then he continued, and then he finally got published, and then he published more and more books, and his
mm,
books, they touched and moved so many people in the world, and his books are very reflective, and they were like very asking about self-conscience and so on, and it was like maybe he pushed so many people out of their comfort zone. What I want to say is that maybe you you follow the urge, and then only later the influence that you're having is revealed. And also maybe the influence can only evolve after something is there, something is created.
mm. I like that. I like that. And I think when you mentioned like you know you hold your breath when you read Reiner's work. I mean, that response, that wanting to preserve the echo or the feeling, you know, that sort of response is a clue to people's purpose, you know. Some people say they may not have found their one purpose, and I perhaps ask people to gently challenge that perspective, because as we've been speaking today, we like to write. We like the spoken voice, the physical feeling of being moved by language and so forth. Um, you know, but we're both parents. We're both busy with family life. We're both working, but we still try to answer that pull that we have, and our purpose is to write. I'm will never probably become a successful, famous writer or write a book on the level of Lord of the Rings or the Free Body Problem or something like that. But I feel by writing and doing what makes me feel happy and alive is answering my purpose. And so I try to do that as much as possible in my spare time, you know. So in that sense, you know, maybe purpose isn't a noun, it's a verb and something you do because life feels less complete without it. And if anything, from listening to that beautiful piece of work that you shared earlier, if Ryan teaches us anything, it's that you don't need to fully understand your purpose for it to be real. You just need to honor it. You need to honor that pull that you have that keeps repeating itself in you and answer that pull.
I'm very happy because it's like this episode is really a bit like a revelation to me because I was suffering from not having my purpose clear. But now let's maybe also have a look at to replug. So, how can we, or what methods and what hints can we give people to find their purpose in life? So,
Mm,
we have talked about it a lot
mm,
already.
mm,
We have already mentioned about a lot how we discovered our purpose or feel the purpose or
hmm
like me didn't know the purpose but like had the urge, and you too, you had the urge to write. um to Let's start with 7 questions helping to find the purpose. I found an article by Mark Manson, 7 strange questions that help you find your life purpose. And I like the questions very much. They're very funny, but I also find they're very effective. Um, Maybe we don't achieve to go through all 7, but
No.
we can try. So, so the first one is, what's your favorite flavor of shit sandwich and does it come with an olive? In the
That was
beginning,
brilliant.
yeah. So in the beginning, I had to think about it because I'm German. I have no, I'm not English is not my mother tongue. But then I
Mm.
realized there is a saying in English, "Eat that shit," right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I completely understood it. So, what shit sandwich do you want to eat? Because we all get served one eventually, and your favorite sandwich is your competitive advantage. So,
Mm.
what pain are you willing to go through to follow the one thing that you are going after or that you want to do? So if you want to be a writer and can't stand being rejected 80 times or even 100 times, might be hard.
Mm.
If you want to be an entrepreneur, and you can't manage to fail, might be hard.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question. I like that.
And the next one is, what's true about you today that would make your 8-year-old self cry? This one also was a bit hard for me to understand. Do you understand where he is aiming to?
Um, yeah, I guess because like when you're young, you're free and you're just exploring life and just enjoying moments. You're not bogged down by
Yeah.
future things, I guess, and stuff like that. I'm sure you have an answer.
No, I read the article, and I mean it was the direction that you spoke about. So he said he was starting to write, or he was writing when he was like 8, 9, 10 years old, and he just wrote. He wrote all the time, and he wrote down his fantasies about aliens and stuff like that. And then he stopped because there came this belief everything you do has to be something that can be rewarded, something
Hmm.
that you can earn money with. And he had no idea how he could earn money with writing, so he stopped. But if he told his 8-year-old self to stop, it would just start crying because it just wanted to play. And now that's the important point.
Hmm.
That's where passion always begins with a sense of play.
Yeah.
And I,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to say I love that. So,
Yeah, no, I love that as well, and we are both parents, so this resonates even more with me. You know, with kids growing up, just encouraging them to explore their creativity and freedom of expression, and not trying to dampen it down or tell them to stop in any way. So yeah, this resonates lovely with me.
yeah. And then number 4 is, how can you better embarrass yourself? I thought about that, and then I thought like, okay, does embarrassment always have to do something with purpose? Not always, I thought so.
Hmm.
But then he said, as I was reading this section, and he explains, great things are, by their very nature, unique and unconventional. Therefore, to achieve them, we must go against the herd mentality. And to do that is scary and embarrassing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
embrace embarrassment. Feeling foolish is part of the path to achieving something important, something meaningful.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And I want to share something.
Hmm.
It's also a bit embarrassing for me to do the podcast because English is not my mother tongue, and I know I'm making pronunciation mistakes and sometimes also translation mistakes. Already, thank you to doing the podcast with me. Yeah,
No, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure, and your English is fantastic. So,
thank you, Barry. I know it's not fantastic, but thank you still.
but
So
it I mean, you just reminded me like you know when I lived in Japan for years and I couldn't speak, but I really lived that philosophy of just putting myself out there, and I know I'm not making the right words or expressions, but I have to be comfortable with that in order to improve and learn and grow. So this question, how can you better embarrass yourself, is a brilliant one.
mm. So there are actually 4 more questions,
Mm.
but I would say let's skip the other 4. And
Hmm.
because I know you also have some facts or some hints, and so maybe let's have a look at your ideas.
Cool, awesome. And I'll just like to say those are brilliant questions, even the ones that we haven't explored. And I really love how direct they are because they cut through all the overthinking and force you to just think. honestly, in that sense. So in the replugging part of our podcast, and as you mentioned, replugging is a way of returning to your, I would say, your internal source of energy and reconnecting with what matters most rather than just, operating on autopilot. So finding purpose is, I guess, really a form of replugging. It's that purpose of coming back to yourself over and over, especially when life becomes noisy or overwhelming. So purpose gives us a place to return to a kind of inner home. And I've got three things that perhaps people can do in terms of finding purpose. The first is to follow the quiet pull rather than the loud pressure. So if something keeps nudging you, keeps coming back to you, a curiosity, a creative urge, an idea that won't go away, maybe pay attention to it. That quiet pull is often more honest than the loud expectations the world places on you. And like you just mentioned about not following the herd and so forth, sometimes your quiet pull will need you to take you away from other things and other people in order for you to answer that. The second one is notice what nourishes you, not just what you're good at. So we often confuse, I think people often confuse purpose with skill, and I've probably done this myself many times previously. But for me, I think purpose isn't always found in what you do well. It's found in what feels meaningful for you. So you can ask yourself, what leaves me feeling more alive afterwards? And usually answering that question, that's a signpost. Purpose often hides inside the activities that restore you, not the ones that replete you. Now, many musicians, and as you said, you've gone for training and voice training and things like that. You get better over time through training, and you develop that skill. But it's that whole process of writing or singing that what does that make you feel like afterwards? And perhaps that's your purpose. Of course, you can develop brilliant skill in it at a later time. And then the last one, the third thing I would say is create small rituals of reconnection. And what I mean is, you don't have to overhaul your life. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference. So, a quiet walk, a moment of stillness, maybe have a check-in question like, what do I need today to feel more like myself? And I think these tiny practices help you tune back into your own frequency because we all have our own inner frequency. And so over time, they build an inner clarity that makes your purpose, I would say, much easier to recognize. So, and as I mentioned, purpose is something that flows through you. So purpose isn't something you find once, it's something that you re-remember again and again. And each time you return to yourself and you replug you.
Thank you, Barry, very much. What
Thank
do I
you.
what do I need today to feel more like myself? I like this question.
Me too. I'm gonna sit down after and answer it in all honesty and then go do something.
Okay. And I'm going to take a walk. I just promised to myself, because when I work, I barely have the opportunity to go outside by day. And as the days are very short today, I want to grab some daylight. Um,
Mm,
yeah. Um, Thank you for the three three hints, and I hope that we gave you some impulses, some ideas about the concept of purpose, and that you don't need to find it somehow hidden under the sand in a big box. It might already be there, but you might haven't recognized it yet. You want to add something?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Purpose isn't a race, and it's not a test. It's I would say it's a relationship with yourself. and with your values and with what you quietly knows matters to you. And so every small step that you take in the direction of honesty and curiosity and connection is a step towards your purpose.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you to our audience today. Enjoy your time. Take the time to feel yourself.
And thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for to everyone else for spending this time with us, for reflecting with us, and importantly for giving yourself permission to explore bigger questions. They matter, and you matter. So until next time, may you find peace, joy, and a sense of purpose in each moment, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. Thank you.